it's huge, just a lot of pages looking at the config file, and any human error you can make with that, and you test your ideas, it's going to be so bad. So it's very important. You really look at that well. And I thought it was a good experience doing that. Didn't get so far how you can set up here with Nord. I just started really looking at using Squeal, because in the tutorial when I was watching YouTube, it basically was using Squeal, and then you go to site testmyids.com, and basically you test if you can receive alerts, and there you validate that's actually working. You're getting alerts on that. It's a good video, so if anyone's interested in receiving my slides in the end, I put in links of where you can download Security Onion, the latest version of Wireshark. For those who haven't updated Wireshark, is a new version, came out like last year, a couple months ago, and then a video tutorial, somewhere on YouTube that I recommend using. So anyone interested in the slide, let me know. I'll make sure to share with Steph when I went through it. Any questions on this slide so far? All right. So next thing I'll talk about vulnerability management. I think this is a pretty good important piece. It's not because what I do at work, but it's also very good at validating when you try to, for at least a red team perspective, you gotta make sure if you want to test a box in your own lab, what vulnerabilities you can find, especially every day, new signature vulnerabilities can be coming up, or 0-day exploits. You can do either render-based or you can use Nmap, and I think it's very important to keep always scanning for potential vulnerabilities in your own victim machines, where you're using a Windows 7 or Windows 10, you have it constantly, having updates. You just want to make sure what you're getting. I think it's very good to make sure what can be exploited or not. So start with Nmap. How many of you have used Nmap? Okay, so you're just people. So Nmaps are great tools, very popular for performing scannings. Just to find open ports, what vulnerabilities you can find. What I like, there's a book that I use in school. It's called the Nmap book, and basically that book covers a lot of Nmap commands you can use. So other than just type Nmap in the IP address, you can use other types of commands, whether TCP scan or SYN scan, all the way to doing like an Nmap scripting engine. So scripting engine basically says custom script for scanning particular things, and you can probably find any exploits. So for those who are interested, I also included a link, but I just want to show it to you. So here's a book I recommend getting for Nmap. It's a great book. It's an old version, 6, because I think they are in 7 or 8, I believe. But I think it's still relevant for doing the command specifically, going further than that. So it's a very good tool in using it. But if you want to try vendor-based, one of the most popular ones is like Qualys and Nessus. So the good news is both these vendor-based, they do offer free versions. So for example, with Qualys, when they offer a Qualys free scan version, you can scan for certain IPs, and while I like that they not just gives you vulnerabilities, but also you can find additional details of like CVEs, common vulnerability exposures, CVS score, what severity are for those vulnerabilities, and you can probably link to that to a page of if that vulnerability could be exploitable, and then you can go all the way deep to how many of you heard of the exploittv.com? It's a great site for finding public available exploits. Obviously, that's probably the last place where you find, because everything there is already exploitable. If you want to find like new exploit released for the first time, I think a good source could be like possibly Twitter. Because a lot of people, security researchers are tweeting the new malware exploit coming out, and then everything will be last resort using an exploit.db. But essentially, what I like when you're finding vulnerability scans, and you're finding potential vulnerabilities depends on the criticality, it can map you to a CVE, and you can find additional reports of what could this impact. So if you're at working environments and they're doing scannings in your environment, but you want to test that in your own lab, I highly recommend doing that. Obviously, don't test prod. Don't test anything in prod on your own job. You don't want to lose your job. You don't want to get fired. You rather test everything in your labs, and that's a purpose of what I'm trying to help teach you here. And it's basically, set this on your own lab, and I think this you can set up in a regular Windows or Linux I believe probably better works in Windows, and then basically once it's configured, you can, I think, give you links to the web interface, and then you can issue your scans there. Nessus is another good alternate as well. I think I used that a couple times. I think it's pretty good. Which one's better? It really depends on it. But one thing I've learned, time to time at school is that it's really important to build a good defensive depth. So, you can set up one IDS or one vulnerability scanner, but what if that vulnerability scanner does not detect everything? You gotta, what would you do about that? And I think it's better you set up two of them because you can try both of them. So I recommend setting up both because you can both scan the same asset and with both vendors and see which vulnerabilities will find or detect. Sometimes the tools may not be perfect, sometimes the signatures may not be updated, sometimes you may see or not. So sometimes you see it and, oh yeah, it's vulnerable. Here's a directory path of the file that's probably vulnerable because whether it's obsolete or it's just recently exploitable. But then maybe the next time you scan it again, it's not vulnerable anymore. So what happened? Why not detect it first and then it was recently detected? So sometimes it's good to validate with other tools like Nessus or even back with Nmap to see if that's still vulnerable. So I think it's very good. It's important to use both of them. So good news, you can download those for free, and with there you can test on your own, which is great.
I just wanted to say we do have a class on vulnerability scanning on our YouTube page, so feel free to take a look at that. And yeah, one thing we'll also mention is definitely get experience with these if you're building a home lab because you want to get experience for potential job opportunities. Nessus, Qualys, all these other scanners are going to be things that you're going to find in job applications, and mentioning those on your resume. Hey, even with the community edition, I have experience using these tools. The differences between the free versions and the professional versions are usually just capabilities. So getting hands-on experience with the free versions and using them in your lab against obviously the systems that you're using every day to get an idea of what vulnerabilities are actually in your network, and then in your lab as well, to see what may be exploitable that you aren't seeing in your lab.
I'd say I also add OpenBOS to that list.
Yeah, OpenBOS is a good one.
OpenBOS, BAS. It's free, and also you can install it in Kali in a single string command.
Yep, that's a great one. I believe that's in Linux or
sometimes by default. It depends on what you do.
Okay. I think this one has before. Yeah,
So I have my question is, so are we installing this physically on our machine, or is this being done virtually? I mean, can you explain the difference?
So you
like
can
how we gather our information, or testing it out, or use it?
So you can do this virtually. I personally think it's these are not physical boxes you buy in your environments. This is something you can install on your own virtualized. So I think you can do it in your own host machine, but I think it's for experiments, it's doing better like our own virtualized. So if you have Windows 10 license and you don't want to use on that, you can clone that Windows 10 and you can install these vendors for vulnerability scanners.
I found Windows 10 licenses on eBay as well.
I'll be talking about actually pretty soon mention that. So yeah, you can get those on eBay and they make a couple clones because if you mess up once, you can refresh it. Yes.
I just wanted to, I may have misheard something earlier, but apart from Nmap, Nessus, Qualys, OpenBOS we just mentioned, I thought I may have heard one mentioned, another one you may have mentioned toward the beginning. Were there any other tools that you would recommend?
For vulnerability scanning perspective?
I'm sorry?
For vulnerability scanning perspective?
Yes. Under this slide, I should say.
From these three and OpenBOS, can't think of others.
Nexpose, 7 people do Metasploit, which I think they rebranded it Insight IDR now.
Also Nicto.
Nicto for web scanning.
Nicto is also a free on Catalyst. I think Catalyst released a new version, so those haven't installed it. Recommended. Any questions on this slide? All right. next thing I want to talk about, which is firewalls. I'm sure you were talking earlier about firewall hardware software case, so here's one we talk about more in detail. So, which one's better? It really depends, but I think essentially I recommend start going better software based like PFSense. But I'll talk first with the hardware based. Hardware based, if you want to really see that physical environment and not do your own diagram, I think it's a good experience doing it. You can buy these, the ones that I have, it costs around $50 on eBay. Probably those did not include a license, unfortunately, so you're not going to have a lot of capabilities. And that's where, as the angle, if you want to really have a robust firewall, then you may be better off going as a software base. So good that you mentioned in the past is PFSense firewall. It's basically, it's an open source router and firewall. It acts as a router as a firewall as well, as a software. And what I like is it has a lot of capabilities like spin up your own IPsec tunneling and VPN services. Haven't done that, but I've seen that you can capable of doing that, and I think it's a very good experience. Yes, PFSense. This one is a pain setting up, at least for me. I'm still in the process of how we're doing that, but really you're gonna see how you map it. Because so my goal is really to set this internally my virtual machines. I don't want to go talk to my personal devices outside of the network. I want to just talk only my virtual machines. So I want to spin up 2 virtual machines and then PFSense firewall as another virtual machine. And there I want to set up, my own firewall rules for those virtual machines. So I'm still figuring out how I can do that, but also I need to have some way of interconnectivity to install packages and, updates, because you're going to maintain that. So it was interesting seeing the sites. I will link as well. But yeah, you can go here. It's the latest version community edition, and here you pick your version. I believe you pick this one, and how you should do is the ISO file. So if it's installing in your own virtual, so whether it's VMware or VirtualBox, this is where you use, and this your obviously your time zone, so using New York. So I personally like, PFSense is very good. You also see the Windows firewall. You may think it's not the greatest, but you can do a lot with Windows firewall. I was taking recent class for the GIAC Windows security class, and that class, by personally, like they mentioned, is you can learn how to use PowerShell scripts to basically configure itself Windows firewall, and basically block internet access, and then you have the limitation of for certain things you can do. So, and don't be shy to try to use this as well. I put a link below of how to set up use PowerShell for Windows firewall. So if you're interested in doing that, I put a link as well, and I also includes IPsec already. So IPsec, for those that know, is basically establish good communication from the client to server, and everything there will be all encrypted. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so our current setup, I know that most of your topology bucket was going to one machine from one machine to virtual machines, right?
Correct.
Okay, so our setup that we have right now that we're working on, because we're from Hillsborough Community College, we're building a hacking laboratory. We've got 2 servers, a switch, a dedicated router, and everything, right? So I don't think we don't have like a hardware firewall. In that situation where we have a bunch of machines being connected, we got 8 laptops, 6 or 7 Raspberry Pis all being connected. Would it be better to go with a hardware security appliance rather than just using PFSense in a virtual environment?
I think it really depends. Depends what you're trying to achieve in the goal. So if it's more like a hacking purpose lab, I mean, you can explore installing PFSense in the Raspberry Pi. I think that'll be very cool. That's something to explore. I mean, traditional firewalls like, like Palo Alto or Sonic Walls and Cisco ASA, those are traditionally, if you're working institution and they have that capability of porting those, then it's great. But home lab purposes, it's not really ideal. You could luckily find them on eBay, but they may cost very cheap. But don't forget that they probably don't have a license installed. So
coincidentally, our budget's about $1,000 also. So
right.
The only thing I would consider with that is hardware limitations and how much how much data you're going to be pushing through a virtual machine with multiple systems, like you said. It's something to consider. It might be something to test out, see if you can put it in a virtual machine, see how well it does. But if you find that traffic's getting bottlenecked or there's an issue, then you may want to look into getting a hardware device that's built to handle that type of traffic.
That was my question, is how much degradation of processing are you gonna give up by using a software-based one versus a hardware one? I mean, did you?
I would say, and this is my opinion, I don't have the experience that he does when it comes to firewall specifically, but I would say if you have a software firewall on a device that's primarily used for that, and it's built around it, it's beefy enough to design to support a good amount of traffic, I would trust it. But if you're running it from a Raspberry Pi, I wouldn't put too much through it. Although I've heard, people using Raspberry Pis for their home
You
firewalls.
can get away with it with a Pi 4, we got about 4 gigs, but one thing I add is they actually sell hardware controllers. I'll have to send you a link, maybe we can put it in the chat or I'll put it on the YouTube video. They're about $150. It's basically 4 1 gig ports. You can flash it with pfSense and it'll handle a gig throughput with content inspection, which is another thing to consider is not only are you filtering, but are you actually going to inspect traffic, because that's going to add more work to it. If you're going to go the virtual route, you want to make sure you have a dedicated NIC card, like a 4-port or 2-port NIC card that you can map to that virtual firewall. That'll take a lot of work off.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
No, I have a question. Just James, you do have a router and a switch also in that lab, so basically they can do the VLANs and they can set up,
Yeah, one's gonna be
So really I wouldn't go worry about PSNs and the software solution, and the whole hardware solution.
Yeah. Essentially, it all depends. I mean, if it's for smaller environment, I mean, it's really more opinion based up to you.
And another option you could do is, you could buy a Cisco ASA on eBay for
$200.
yeah, and that'll give you the basic capabilities of a firewall to just mess around with.
Yeah, we already had the ASA.
Okay.
So they have.
Any other questions?
Just make sure to update it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Level 7 password just
Yeah. Again, all these is more geared towards home lab, like your own home apartment, your dorm. For a bigger environment, then obviously the budget could be bigger, so it depends. Well, this is assuming you're just on your own testing lab environment. The next thing we'll talk about is security information event management, known as SIM tools. How many of you have heard of Splunk? Used in your environment. So Splunk is very well known. A log and event log and gradation. It has a lot of features you can do. So more than just gathering logs of particular traffic and forward it all your devices in there, but also you can create reports and dashboards to monitor that as well. So one of the cool features of Splunk is you can set up your own alerts based on whatever your traffic is seeing. So any anomalies you're looking for, you can create your own alerts and send it to you yourself. Everything is really what I like is worked on your search bar. For those haven't taken the course of Splunk Fundamentals 1, I highly recommend it. It's a course that you can really go through the basic of how to use Splunk searches, and you can dive into further when using regular expressions. That's going to be very good if you're doing on your own search, because then you can find precisely, more potential anomalies that you maybe didn't have originally in your visibility. And if you think you're seeing that often, you can create that as a dashboard, monitor that from time to time. Maybe have another screen seeing that. So I like that those features are pretty cool. You can install Splunk Enterprise for free. You have about 60 days, so that includes when you're doing Splunk Fundamentals 1. So I really recommend doing that for Enterprise. Then after that, you'll be just using your regular Splunk, and that basically you can set up on your own, probably your own home desktop or your own virtual machine where you want to forward your your data. I have not personally had experience with, set up forwarders. So one of the things you can do is Splunk, you set up forwarders and forward all your traffic there. I have not gone further in experience with that. I think I had this for enterprise for a little bit when I was doing the course, but then now it expires and I have the free version. So all I do is just basically have simple logs from my own device, just for experience. But other alternates you can try is like a key radar, which is done by IBM. It's another SIM tool you can use, and the good thing they offer a free community edition. And that one you can explore setting up your logs there and seeing how it's categorized. So I haven't played much with QRadar, so I don't know what other features they can include more than Splunk. Splunk is very well used. I mean, I highly recommend as a starting point is Splunk because many companies use that. It's very common to use. It's worthwhile putting on your resume, and I think a lot of companies that you look for if you're certified on that. So first certification is Splunk certified user, and all you need is just a first course, which is free. So if you really know, understanding how the course, if it works, and you've done the labs, and you could potentially take the exam. I think it costs about like $120 around there. So I highly recommend doing that. So any questions so far? All right. So the next part I want to talk about is virtual machines. So here's where all the virtual machines. So I'm sure you asked about you can get Windows for free for an eBay. Yes, that's true. So I'll be talking first on the Linux distribution side. So the one I recommend is Rednux. So I'm sure you saw my diagram. I mentioned Rednux in the past. So Rednux basically is a malware reverse engineering tool, and there you can set up all malware lab isolated, and you can start using their tools, their features in the virtual machine, and we can use this in a digital forensic perspective, analyze particular files that are infected with malware. I've used this once for one of my projects at school, and basically it's taking a digital forensic tool, and I use Rednux. And one of the tools they have there is basically scanning for any PDF files that could be infected, and how it does that, it basically takes the files, submits it to a site called VirusTotal. How many of you heard of VirusTotal? So VirusTotal is a site that you can submit your file or a hash or IPs, and they will look the scans for that IP or hash, whichever file, for all the vendors that may have marked that as whether it's infected or not, or if it's a command and control C2 or any exploits abuse. So what I like, you can do that internally with Rednux. So what you do is, find a file you can potentially make infected. So get it from the dark web, just make sure when you install it, you turn off your internet. So basically, in your virtualized environment, if you have Rednux and you have see Windows 10 on it, make sure those are segregated with different IPs, like those connect out to the internet. Or if it does, you can change your adapter to isolate it. And once you have it downloaded and analyze that PDF file, you can automatically submit it to the environment. It's all done in the command line. So what I like is it gives you, it gives you status of whether it's infected or not. So it's a good experience doing that. Is there other tools you can use other than just for files? I haven't explored much, but I think it's a good way for if you want to go in the digital forensic perspective. Ubuntu, it's a very well-known common Linux distro. I think it's great for those who are beginning to learn Linux, using Linux commands. I think it's great to use. It's very easy to navigate. I think it's highly recommended. Do everything from the command line, learn how directory file works, learn about the root directory, how to use sudo. I think it's good to navigate through that. And then also you can do Red Hat. Red Hat's an enterprise, they usually have vendor basic, they're highly priced, and the free version is the CentOS. But I found a site that you can get Red Hat potentially for free. I may be wrong, it's not eBay. There's a site called Red Hat Developer. It's called Red Hat Enterprise Next. You can actually get that for free. You just have to make sure you create an account and sign up. And from there you can get the boot ISO file, and you have the version of Red Hat. So you have to make sure you connect to the internet, so when you're installing this.
Red Hat, literally.
So, so far it does work. I mean, it's,
Under Fedora,
I believe the
before
Red
they
Hat's
make it enterprise.
a nice
Has IBM found out about that yet?
It's kind of their testing platform.
So, but yeah, for those who haven't done it, I think it's a good site. So I put the link on my slide. Red Hat, what I like is it's a little bit different from Ubuntu. It's very different. You type the commands, especially like installing packages with Lin. And in Ubuntu, it's all about for installing packages like apt-get, and while Red Hat is using yum. It's what is known used for installing packages and repositories. So that's what I know. I recommend for that, or Linux distros. And you can get also Cal Linux. I didn't mention it, but Cal Linux, great. Yes.
Fedora Linux is actually Red Hat's kind of like testing platform. They push everything to Fedora first, which is free, and then once they test it out there and it works all right, then they push it out to Red Hat. So that might be a free version.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it's probably $10. Yeah. But, so that's basically what I have. For Windows, once I mentioned, yeah, you can get Windows on the eBay version. So you can. What I recommend is if you're still a student, if you want to go that route, if you're still a student, you can get that also for free when you're still in the institution. But a good way to explore is Windows Server. Specifically, newest version, they have Windows Server 2019. From there, you can have good experience learning set up Active Directory, use PowerShell. Yes, you have a question?
Are your slides going to be available on Undercost Slack page, or?
So I'll be sending it to him, so it's up to you where you want to put it.
We'll look into that.
All right.
Yeah. They'll be available to anyone through us. I'm sure we'll find a way to get them to UC as
So
well.
DC 813 site?
Yeah, that's complicated. But if you email our email address, we'll get them out to you. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's what I have for installing Windows. So if anyone's interested in getting that, I recommend exploring with Windows Server. What I like is you can set up your own Active Directory, you can configure your own DNS, you can learn PowerShell. So with that sitting down in your environment, it's another additional tool you can install. And that brings me all the way to